Welcome back to the podcast, friends. Today is going to be about feeling lonely. But I just want to say it's so hard to talk about loneliness when it's different slightly for everybody, right? So, and it's going to feel like it's going to be cliche. And you know how everybody's got a solution and everybody just says, well, be with God and stuff. I'm not trying to make that redundant or repetitive or cliche. It's corny, but it's true. Yes, it's true that having a relationship with God can help with this. But also, it's not. I'm trying not to come off as, it's easy. Okay. So with that being said, because loneliness is. We've all been there. Well, I don't know about all, but, when you have a family and you got kids that are young and you got your friends, you're young, and life is good for most part. As you get older and the kids are all gone and they probably moved away and you just can't get in your car and drive 10 minutes and see them. A lot of people that grow older with their children and grandchildren in different states, different provinces, it's hard. And as you get older, you're usually, if you're lucky, you have your partner, your wife, your husband, and you love them and you think the world of them. But there's more that you need. Sometimes change your life. You don't party anymore, or whatever the case may be, you fell in the blank and you're not a part of the circle that you once were. And that can cause loneliness if you're not fortunate enough to find another group. Many people don't have churches in their area and stuff like that. I think I'm going to title this something like When You're Not Alone But Still Lonely. And Psalms 25:16 is what I was thinking about. Turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted. So we're going to be talking about the loneliness no one sees. I want to talk about a feeling that quietly affects many, maybe even you, but is rarely discussed out loud. Loneliness. Loneliness doesn't always mean being physically alone. You can have a wonderful husband or a wonderful wife and still feel lonely. Not because your spouse isn't enough, not because you're on love, but because there are many types of relationships that our soul needs, that God designed us to need. And sometimes we're missing one or several of them. Some of you have moved to new cities or moved to new churches and have left your support system behind. Some of you maybe used to have large circles of friends, or you lived a more outgoing lifestyle and now find that unfulfilling. And chances are, if you became a Christian, especially if you're a little older, chances are you have had to kind of find a new circle of friends just because you don't do these things anymore. Maybe you're more isolated now than ever before. And in that quiet space, you feel something you didn't expect. A deep ache for being unseen or disconnected. We live in a world where people talk through text messages, comment threads, and emails. Face-to-face interaction is becoming rare. I know, you might think I'm crazy, but it's true. You may scroll through social media and see people surrounded by friends, only feel like you're the only one alone, forgetting that many of those friendships are surface level at best, or completely online. We are made for more than this, and today God wants to speak into that space of pain and remind you you're not alone, even when you feel lonely. There's a few points. So point 1, you can be surrounded and still feel alone. My friends and companions stand aloof from my affliction, and my neighbors stand far off. And that's Psalms 38:11. You can feel lonely even when you are surrounded by people. Have you ever been in a room full of people, at a party, at a church, maybe even at home, and still feel invisible? That is not unusual. That's loneliness. The world tells us we're connected because we have followers, we have a lot of likes, or we get DMs. But these things don't satisfy the soul. Loneliness isn't about proximity. It's about connection. And many of us are missing the kind of connection that feeds our hearts. King David knew that feeling very well. He wrote many of his psalms while alone, rejected, or running for his life. And yet, even in his isolation, he reached for God. Even though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Psalms 23:4. You may be in that valley right now, but my friend, you are not alone. The breakdown of true community. Well, woe to him who is alone when he falls and has no other to lift him up. Ecclesiastes 4:10. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Galatians 6:2. Once upon a time, we used to know our neighbors. We borrowed sugar from next door. We asked for a pan of bread because ours was in the oven and not cooked. Kids played in the streets, and the sounds of laughter, wow. If someone was sick, meals showed up at the door. People came. If a woman was sick and had children and her husband was away working, they came, they cleaned the house. It was a community affair. But today, when something breaks, we don't call a neighbor. We search Google and hire a stranger. And many of us don't even know the names of the people that's living next to us. I've been guilty of that. The erosion of community has left a deep void in our lives. It's not that people don't care. It's that they're overwhelmed, they're overworked, they're overscheduled. And in that gap, loneliness thrives. Satan loves to make people feel lonely. But God designed us to be interdependent. Not just spiritually, but practically. He said, it is not good for man to be alone. Genesis 2:18. We are made for a relationship with him and with other people. Even Jesus felt lonely. My God, why have you forsaken me? Matthew 27:46. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. Isaiah 53:3. Even Jesus, God himself, in the human form, knew loneliness. He was misunderstood by family, he was betrayed by friends, and abandoned by followers, and forsaken at the cross. Why does that matter? Because it means he understands your pain. He's not a distant God. He's a God who entered this world, and he knows our suffering, and he has felt every emotion that we face. And when Jesus felt lonely, he turned to God. In the Garden of Gethsemane, overwhelmed with sorrow, he prayed. On the cross, forsaken, he cried out. And that's what we must do too. We are to turn, run, and run towards God, not away from Him in our lonely places. It's easy. We get depressed. We get thinking about bad thoughts. A lot of the times it leads to bad thoughts if you don't counteract the feeling of loneliness. How do we overcome it? With the risk of sounding corny, reach for God first. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalms 34:18. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. Psalms 42:2. Loneliness can be a doorway to deeper intimacy with God. Sometimes He allows the silence of others so we'll hear His voice more clearly. We can try and rebuild community if that's possible, one connection at a time. They've devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship. And it says they broke bread in their homes and ate together. And that's Acts 2:42 through 46. I didn't read the whole thing, but it's there. Don't wait for community. Build it. You know, like that movie. Build it and they will come. But start with one conversation, one coffee, one small little group. Real connection doesn't happen in crowds. It happens in commitment. With that said, it's not everybody is in a situation to fulfill that. Some of us are isolated physically in very small communities, you know, and it's not possible, right? But to some, to a lot, it is. Use your loneliness as fuel for purpose. Comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. That's 2 Corinthians 1:4. Your loneliness can give you empathy. Use it to notice others, to serve, to love. There's someone out there feeling what you have or is feeling. Be the one who shows up. Be honest about your needs. Where there is no guidance, that people fall, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. Proverbs 11:14. Talk to a friend. Talk to a pastor, a therapist even. You don't need to carry this alone. Vulnerability isn't weakness. That's what society wants you to think. It's the first step towards healing. You are never truly alone. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Hebrews 13:5. Church loneliness is real. Community loneliness is real. But so is God's presence. He sees you in the quiet rooms. He hears you in your silent nights. He sees your tears on your pillow. He sees you in your car, driving to and from work. He sees you wherever you are. And He knows what you're going through. He knows the weight you carry. Let's become a church that notices the unseen. Let's build real relationships, show up for one another, and carry each other's burdens. Let's be people who don't just gather in crowds, but connect in love. And if you're here today and feeling forgotten, hear this. God has not abandoned you. He is near, and so are your church. If you are in one, I hope that they are near too, if you just reach out. So that's it, folks. I know, like I said in the beginning, it can sound corny. It can sound like, blah, blah. It's easier said than done. And it is. It's easier said than done. We do have to form a relationship with God. If you're alone, if you're elderly, and you have relatively good health and you live alone, but you go weeks and weeks and weeks without ever seeing anybody, then I feel for you, because I know what loneliness is like, and it's not easy. Maybe God, in His mercy, will give you an uplifted feeling. Anyway, folks, till next time, God bless.